Welcome to this special edition of Go Vote Omaha, a candidate forum for Legislative District 39, presented by the League of Women Voters of Greater Omaha. I'm Mary Lee Moulton, the Communication Director of the League and the moderator for this forum. The League never supports or opposes political parties or candidates. We present this forum solely for voter education. The format is as follows. Each candidate will get a 1-minute opening statement, followed by questions prepared by the League. Each candidate will answer every question and will have up to 90 seconds to answer. Following the questions, each candidate will have a 2-minute closing statement. We alternate speaking order throughout. A timekeeper, Kathy Bass, will signal candidates when they have 30 seconds of time remaining and when to stop talking. Before the forum, the candidates flipped a coin to determine the initial speaking order, and I will introduce them now in that order. There are 2 candidates running for Legislative District 39, which includes the areas around Elkhorn, Waterloo, and Valley. So the candidates are Allison Heimes and Linehan. And Allison, you will be doing the first opening statement.
Okay, well, thank you so much for having us. This is wonderful. Obviously, this is my first time running for office, so I've never gotten to do a candidate forum, so this is very exciting. My name is Allison Heimes. I am an immigration and criminal law attorney at the law firm Carlson and Burnett in Omaha. I'm a mom. I have 2 boys, Finn and Max. Finn is 4, Max is 2. I am a military spouse. My husband is full-time Army National Guard out at Camp Ashland. And I decided to run for office last year. The real pivotal moment was after my brother's death. I really wanted to advocate for mental health awareness and veterans burial plaques and the like. My brother passed away from suicide, so mental health is very important to me.
All right, Luann, your turn.
Thank you. I'm Linehan. I'm currently the state senator from Elkhorn, District 39, and also chair of the Revenue Committee in the legislature. I grew up on a family farm in southeast Nebraska. My parents instilled in my brothers and sister and me the importance of faith, family, and service to community and country. Today, my family still operates the farms where we grew up. And today, those 3 pillars remain what's important to me: my faith, my 4 grown children, their spouses, and my 6 grandchildren, and public service, including the honor I have representing Elkhorn and Millard, Valley, and Waterloo in the legislature. In my first term, we cut taxes for homeowners, businesses, seniors, and veterans. We increased the property tax credit relief to $400 million for 2020 and millions more over the next few years. In addition, we stopped taxing annual cost of living adjustments for Social Security retirement. We cut state taxes on military retirement income in half.
Okay, now it's time to move on to questions. So the first question goes to Linehan. Since the medical marijuana initiative was ruled ineligible, it's likely that the bill to approve it will be reintroduced in the next session. Will you support a medical marijuana bill? Why or why not?
This is a difficult issue. I know people have very strong feelings on both sides, but the reality is Nebraska Attorney General's opinion on the constitutionality of LB 110, which was the bill last year, the adoption of the Medical Cannabis Act in 2019, is very clear. According to the Attorney General, I'm going to quote this: by creating a state regulatory scheme that would affirmatively facilitate the cultivation, possession, wholesale distribution, and retail sale of federal contraband on an industrial scale would frustrate and conflict with the purpose and intent of the Controlled Substances Act. Accordingly, we conclude that the Medical Cannabis Act was preempted by the Controlled Substances Act and would be therefore unconstitutional, end quote. This opinion makes it difficult for any action to be taken on medical marijuana. Any action we take as a state to legalize medical marijuana would be unconstitutional. The federal government needs to decide whether they're going to allow medical marijuana to be legal or whether they are going to prosecute people according to the law. This really rests with the federal government making a decision so states can move forward in a comfortable way.
Okay. Allison Heimes, do you need the question repeated or are you good?
No, I understand. So I absolutely support legalizing medical marijuana. There have been several families in my district who have indicated that they have children or spouses who suffer from either seizures or cancer, and that medical marijuana would greatly improve the quality of their life. And I don't believe that I am qualified to deny them that access to that kind of treatment when there are doctors who say that marijuana can absolutely help alleviate that kind of pain on families. And as far as the federal government goes, they have indicated, at least the Justice Department has indicated, that they would not go after states who used their authority to legalize marijuana. And in fact, many states have already done so. So that's just another reason to allow families in our jurisdiction, in our state, to allow them to have access to medical marijuana, especially when they could get that access in other states. I don't want Nebraska to be behind in any initiative.
Okay. All right. Oh,
You lost your background.
yes. Hang on. I'm not sure that we didn't lose the recording. Hold on a second. We'll just.
It's still
forge ahead
recording.
Still recording.
Still recording.
Still recording.
Okay, we'll just go without the background.
background's
Okay. Okay, so next question. What do you think about privatization of schools, and what does an equitably funded public school system look like? And this time we'll begin with Allison Heimes.
Thank you. So public schools have and always have been pillars of the community. Public schools partner with home schools and private schools to provide services all the time. And public schools also provide services in students ranging from ages 3 to 21. So they provide an awful lot to students that learn in very different ways. All kids have a right to education, constitutionally have a right to education, and public schools ensure that kids get that. District 39 has really great public schools. The Millard Public Schools, Elkhorn Public Schools, DC West, all of those are in District 39. And Millard and Elkhorn have consistently voted on bond issues that would raise the local property taxes because they want to keep their schools so great. In addition, Millard and Elkhorn have always been really efficient in how they spend their money. So we can't claim that they're being irresponsible with the money or wasteful in the money that they get. But quite frankly, our state has consistently pitted property owners against public schools. And this issue has been going on since 1989. Year after year, we put Band-Aids on this issue, but we've never really gotten to the core issue. We can throw $100 tax credits out as much as we want and call it property tax relief, but if we never address the heart of the issue, if we never call a coalition of people to come together and really fix the issue, we're going to keep having this problem well into the future.
Okay, let's go over now to Linehan to answer the question.
That's I don't think I'm going to be able to do this in 60 seconds. You've thrown out. Okay, I'll take funding. I'm happy to take funding. The reason people are concerned about property taxes in Nebraska is because our property taxes are absurd. We're way out of line with the rest of the country. We have retirees in our district having to move because they can't, their property tax payment is more per month than their house payment was when they bought their house. We have young families like Allison's, that 30% of their mortgage is going to a property tax payment. It's out of line with the whole rest of the country. So for the last 2 years, actually the last 4 years, but really in the last 2 years, I worked very hard with several other senators to increase state funding to schools. We had a bill, 1106, which would have increased state funding to public schools in Nebraska by $500 million and keep growing. Now that would take where we currently are at $1 billion a year up 50% to $500 million. And there was not an appetite amongst the public schools, the majority of them, to move away from property taxes to state funding for schools. I am happy to come back to that discussion. I think that is the answer, but we had $500 million on the table and we could get past 25 votes, but we could not break a filibuster. So I agree that the state, and I believe this since I started running for the legislature, when I've looked at it, we're most states spend more state funding, which means more of other tax revenue or property taxes to support public schools. Thank you.
Okay, question 3. If you are elected, you'll be dealing with redistricting in 2021. What do you intend to do to make sure redistricting is fair, it's a fair process in Nebraska, and Nebraska does not end up with gerrymandered districts? How do you ensure that politicians do not pick their own voters? And this one will start with Linehan.
Thank you. I appreciate the question. I know it's much on everybody's mind. I think I'm not going to support any efforts to move redistricting out of the state legislature. Redistricting is a very specific and clear duty of Nebraska's nonpartisan legislature. In fact, Article 3, Section 5 of the Nebraska State Constitution explicitly places the authority of redistricting with the legislature. This sentence is in the Constitution. The legislature shall redistrict the state after each federal decennial census. I do not support delegating that duty, which is critically important, to unelected people. We, the 49 senators in the legislature, are elected by our constituents, and we should do our job according to the Constitution and do redistricting. If our constituents aren't happy with that, they cannot send us back to the legislature. But I don't think you want unelected people doing redistricting in Nebraska.
Okay. Over to Allison Heimes.
Thank you. So very simply, voters should be able to choose their elected officials, and elected officials should not choose their voters. I'm a strong advocate for transparency when it comes to this issue. I think that's the only solution. I think we should utilize computer algorithms rather than rely on individual senators to draw the district lines. The best way that we can. I know that computer algorithm can't do it all, but computers can do an awful lot, and including the parameters that we put on them. So I think we should rely on that, and then after we draw those lines, have hearings on how those maps look, and then the legislature can have a vote after that. This is a bipartisan issue. I mean, this is a concern across the board. California has had this issue. Wisconsin has had this issue where their state senators ended up drawing gerrymandered lines and affecting the electorate. And I think that's something that we as a state hope to avoid. I mean, it's been attempted already in the legislature. Mello and Morante created a bill, which is a bipartisan bill that was passed to create an independent council. And then the legislature would later vote on the map that the independent council created. But it ended up getting vetoed later. But I think that we could come up with a solution that doesn't involve an independent council, but that still doesn't allow for state senators to draw the maps independently.
Okay, on to question 4. So Latinx people are a rising electorate in Nebraska. What do you think their issues are, and how would you advocate for that community? Also, can you speak specifically as to whether you would support regulation of meatpacking plants where many Latinx are essential workers? And the first answer will go to Allison Heimes.
Yeah, so I'm an immigration attorney. And when I worked at my other firm, I was also a member of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And, you know, quite frankly, the issues that the Latin community deals with are the same issues that every community deals with. Those being quality education, access to healthcare, access to a safe environment to raise your family. They want to put food on the table just like the rest of us do. And so I think just the same policies that would help the regular community would help the Latin community as well. But in addition, we need to really build up Latin leaders. People in the Latin community need to come to the table, and we need to invite them as often as possible. In regards to the meatpacking plant workers, I was really disappointed that we didn't do more in the last session to help the meatpacking plant workers. We dub these people essential workers, and so I think it's our duty to protect them and keep them safe. And we could have done so by offering them rapid on-site testing or providing more safety measures in meatpacking plant facilities. And so had I been in the legislature, I definitely would have voted for something like that at the time.
Okay, over to Linehan.
Thank you. I will agree with part of what Allison said. I think the families, like, you know, families face the same struggles as other families. I mean, jobs, can you afford a house payment? Can you afford to even have a down payment for a house? And I think, you know, that those are the same kind of struggles that many, many Nebraskans face. When it comes to what was done for the meatpacking industry and the workers in particular, I think there's a misunderstanding, frankly, of how much was done. I don't recall the exact numbers, but UNMC and the governor worked together to ensure that we got testing out to those plants. UNMC, their medical team that knows more about this than anybody else in the state, were in several. I mean, the last I knew it was almost at least 10 plants across the state of Nebraska, giving them guidance on how to protect their employees, making sure they were doing all they could to protect their employees. I think there's a misunderstanding that somehow the owners or the people who run the meatpacking plants weren't concerned about their employees. I mean, it is in everybody's best interest, and in the employees' best interest, in the meatpackers' best interest, in our whole economy in Nebraska, and the ranchers' best interest, our feedlot producers, for those employees to be healthy and able to go to work. So maybe it's because I was here and I saw the intensity of how concerned the governor was, how concerned people in the legislature were, and how much on the ball UNMC was.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. Okay, next question. In your legislative district, what are the top 2 issues most important to your constituents? And this time we will start with Luann Linehan.
Taxes, and then taxes. 4 years ago, I went door to door, and it was a constant. And it's not because they don't want us to have great schools. They want great schools. To points that have been made earlier, people move to Elkhorn to be in the Elkhorn School District. I realize that. They're very proud of their schools, and they should be. They're some of not only the best schools in the state, they're some of the best schools in the country. When you pull up the nationwide assessments of schools, Elkhorn is always on the list. So, but we've got to find a way to make sure we keep those excellent schools without taxing people out of their homes. And it would be one thing if our property taxes were high, but our income taxes were reasonable. We're a high tax state, and it shocks a lot of people who move here because they assume a conservative state like Nebraska will have a tax structure from I just spoke this week to someone who moved here from Colorado. Their property taxes are 3 times and their income taxes are 50% higher. Thank you.
Okay, over to Allison Heimes.
So, you know, same thing. When I was out knocking on doors, I heard from a lot of constituents about their concerns, and definitely property taxes are high on everybody's list, and so are the qualities of public schools. But, you know, I gotta say that when you start really talking to them about issues in longer conversations, issues like healthcare and mental health access come up a lot too. I think a lot of people confide in me about their issues with mental health and having access to services after they hear my story. So it could be that, you know, I'm getting a skewed version of what constituents care about, but you know, not a single person has told me that they don't think that we have an issue in this state when it comes to access to mental health services after I tell them about my experience, or a constituent would tell me about their experience. And it seems like something that we all agree on, that we need to make sure that people have access to these kinds of services, and that providing them in public schools would be a great option, which is why our public schools need to remain funded as much as possible, and that we expand Medicare Medicaid like we promised that we would. So I'm absolutely committed to finding a solution to end the fight between public schools and property owners, but I'm also committed to providing access to mental health services to all of the people in Nebraska.
Okay, all right, moving on. Next question. With events like the derecho that started in Nebraska and devastated Iowa and the flooding last year, does Nebraska need a climate plan? And we'll start with Allison Heimes this time.
So everyone is affected by climate change. There's not a single person on the planet that is not going to be affected by the rise in temperature in our climate. I think particularly our district, Valley and Waterloo, were impacted by flooding, and things like that happen more and more as climate change becomes more prevalent. Honestly, I would turn to the city of Omaha as to whether or not the state of Nebraska needs one. The city of Omaha is already working on a climate change plan. I think that Mayor Stothert was very wise in her forethought that we needed a plan like that, and I think we should follow suit as a state so that the rest of Nebraska doesn't get left behind. Because things like dry seasons for farmers, flooding, and population migration are things that we need to be concerned about, because as certain areas are affected more by climate change, people begin to move into areas like Elkhorn and areas like Omaha to get away from the effects of climate change. So I do think that as a state, we need to have a plan for that.
Okay, over to Luann Linehan.
Thank you. I've actually been close and in touch with this issue from my time when I worked in the federal level of government. Climate change is an issue that it's not only the state of Nebraska needs to address it, but so does the country as a whole, and so do we internationally. We can't do anything. It's not a small scale situation. I know the U.S. military is concerned and has things that they have looked at we can do about ocean rising where we have bases. But here's what I think most in Nebraska can do. We all know what's good for the climate and what's not good for the climate. And I think it's incumbent really, and I trust Nebraskans, for all of us to work together and do what we know is good for the climate. And I just don't know that a Nebraska plan is I don't know how productive it can be. It's a little bit bigger than Nebraska.
Okay. Let's move on to one last question, and we're going to try to go with 60 seconds this time because I think we're getting toward the end. So this question will begin, let's see, with Luann Linehan, I believe. Yep, you finished. So recently, Senator Sass floated the idea of repealing the 17th Amendment, which provides for the direct election of senators. He believes state legislatures should go back to choosing senators. Do you agree or disagree, and why?
I disagree. And I think the world of Senator Ben Sass. And I have not talked to him about this issue, so maybe he could convince me. But I haven't talked to him personally, so right now I'm not in agreement. I think direct election by the voters is appropriate. Now, maybe decades ago it wasn't because there was less information. We didn't have as much ability for people to know what's going on. And today we have multiple news channels, multiple newspapers, we have the internet, we have the ability for Senator Sass to call anybody in Nebraska he wants to if they have a cell phone anytime, day or night. So I'm not in favor of that, but I'm willing to listen, but right now I would say no.
Allison Heimes?
As a testament to our ability to get along and work together, Luann and I agree. I do not agree with Senator Sass. I think part of being elected into office is also being held accountable to those people who elected you. So I think it's absolutely crucial that people be able to elect their senators so that they feel accountable to those people.
Okay, well, let's move to closing statements. First, we'll hear from Luann Linehan.
First of all, I want to thank the League of Women Voters of Greater Omaha for organizing this unusual candidate forum, and I also want to thank Allison for participating. For 4 years, I've worked hard to represent my constituents in the Valley and Waterloo. In the legislature, it's truly been an honor. I'm blessed to represent what I believe to be the best part of Nebraska and the best Nebraska has to offer. In my first term, we managed to cut taxes for homeowners, businesses, seniors, and veterans. We increased state property tax relief this year to $400 million. Hundreds of millions of more property relief over the next few years. We stopped taxing the annual cost of living adjustments for Social Security retirement so seniors can stay in Nebraska. We cut taxes in half for military retirement income, encouraging, hopefully, keeping those retired military people in Nebraska. We definitely need the workforce. This was important progress, but I don't feel like I'm finished. I feel like there's much more to do. We need a tax code that works, that rewards hard work, that encourages entrepreneurship, encourages job creation, and helps retirees, one on which, and their grandchildren, of which I have 6, enjoy life and prosper right here in Nebraska. I will continue to fight for these things for the next 4 years. I believe in the people in Nebraska. I believe in Nebraska and our people. I'm optimistic about our future. I would appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Allison Heimes?
Thank you. So I like to echo Luann's sentiments. Thank you so much for hosting this. This was so much fun. And I absolutely love that Luann and I got to do this together. I have lived in Elkhorn for 7 years. My husband and I bought our first home in Elkhorn. We've raised 2 children in that home. I walked my son into his first day of school at an Elkhorn public school. We live, we shop, you know, we eat in our district and we love it. And I couldn't be happier to live where I live. So I really want to be a part of solutions that help the people that live in my district. I want a government that stands behind regular people, that stands behind regular Nebraskans and really listens and collaborates to find solutions for issues. I want to help people recover from national issues like COVID and flooding, and I want to help people recover from personal issues like illness and personal loss and unemployment. And that's why I hope that I earn the people's vote.
Okay, well, this concludes the forum for LD 39. The League thanks all the candidates for participating. For the League of Women Voters of Greater Omaha, I'm Mary Lee Moulton, reminding you to inform yourself about the issues and candidates. Our voter guide will hopefully be out by October 3rd, and you will also be able to get it on vote411.org. Get your mail-in ballots back to the Election Commission before November 3rd by mail, and on Election Day, Tuesday, November 3rd, go vote Omaha. Thanks very much.
Thank you.